I had to learn meditation, right? I had to, and I tried for many, many years in various different ways. And I just thought, I am not good at this and I can't do it. And, I'm good at these other things. Let's go over here instead, right? But once I found the practice that worked for me, it's just opened up such a different world, a whole new world that's pretty expansive.
That is today's guest, Amira Alvarez, and I'm Emma-Louise Parks, and you're listening to the Ambitious Introvert Podcast. Welcome or welcome back if you're a seasoned listener. What's really interesting is we talk a lot in this episode about nourishment. And this really made me laugh because just a few short weeks ago, the episode with Sarah Elizabeth, we talked all about nourishment in a very different way through our diet, through our lifestyle. And today, this conversation with Amira is talking about nourishment in a deep fulfillment way. So Amira is the founder and CEO of The Unstoppable Woman. She's the host of the Unstoppable Woman podcast, and she's an entrepreneur, private mentor, and trusted advisor for The Ambitious Woman. Her clients are what she describes as ultra successful. They are already accomplished and they want to achieve more. Very much like my clients and a solo episode that I chatted about just a few months ago. So whether it's more financial wealth, whether it's more fulfilling lives, whether it's more nourishment, Amira really focuses on them living an exquisite life. And that's what we're talking about today. So as well as that inner nourishment that is so important to us introverts, we discuss balance in masculine and feminine energy, which of course is so vital, especially if you're a business owner, but also if you're building out a really successful career. We talk about Amira's story and how she transformed her business and really how she's gone through the masculine and the feminine energy and how she's blended the two to get to a place now where she is ultra successful and also deeply fulfilled and nourished. And probably my favorite part of this conversation, we dive very deeply into alone time and what that means for spiritual connection. And also how the quality of your alone time can differ greatly. Now, over the last few months, I've been talking a lot about solitude on the podcast because it is so vital for us introverts. And I couldn't have asked for Amira to be a guest at a better time to kind of back up everything that I have been going on about, because she shares beautifully just how her own solitude practice was something that indeed she had to practice. It didn't come naturally, but she also talks about the effects that it's had on her life, on her well-being, her mental health, her financial situation, her relationships, all of these things. So overall, this is a really beautifully expansive episode. And I really hope that you can feel Amira's beautiful energy and recognize that as a fellow introvert, she has cultivated that and this level of success by prioritizing her inner world. Amira, welcome to the Ambitious Introvert. It is wonderful to see you again. We had a beautiful coffee chat around 6 weeks ago, and now here you are. I know that we are very aligned in our beliefs on many subjects and in the way we approach our clients and in the way we think about success. So I am very excited to have this discussion with you and share it with my audience.
Emma, I'm thrilled to be here. Our conversation previously was such a connected one. It felt like we were like-minded souls having a conversation. We do have slightly different paths and direction and perspectives, so that's going to be a really interesting conversation to have. So I'm excited.
It was one of those great things because we had a 15-minute call scheduled and ended up talking for like 50 minutes. I think it just rolled on. And I think that's really important with introverts in particular, is when you find those connections and you can have an easy conversation and it flows. And like you say, you have a different life path to someone, you have a different lived experience, but you have the same values and the same perspectives on things, and it all overlaps. So we have those really nourishing conversations that, we don't love small talk, obviously. And it's an important reminder of when we can find those connections, how they can be really nourishing for us.
Absolutely. I think that there are a couple of words there, phrases that you've pulled out that I'd like to underscore. One is nourishing. Like, what nourishes us? What allows us to really feel like fed by life, like really, really whole? And that's a question that I'm continuously asking myself. What would be nourishing today? What would be nourishing in my business? What feels good right now? And that then begs the question, does everything that feels good nourish you? I think that's a little bit of a dilemma. There are things that don't necessarily feel good in the moment that will nourish you long term. And yet that splicing that apart, especially as women, right? We trust our feelings. We are, we have a gut or intuitive instinct that we plug into, and our feelings say, do this. No, you're not ready to do this, or this would not be nourishing. And yet there's a whole nother side of business, which is also about, okay, well, we have to get out there and do some of the things that need to be done in the business, even when you don't feel like doing them. And how do you differentiate and decide that? So I've launched into, it's a sort of a side topic here, but those are the things that have been rolling around in my head recently in terms of how I'm coaching my clients versus how I used to coach my clients, and the changes that have evolved for me and my perspective around that.
One of the very first one-on-one coaches I worked with probably 5 years ago, she used this concept of, what do you need today? And what does your business need today? And I think that's very interesting, even people listening that are, in corporate rather than running their own business. But there is a part of you that may need something. You may need to go and take a nap on the sofa, or, you may need to drink 2 liters of water and get your hydration levels up. But probably your career or your business needs something. And you may not feel like doing that, but how can you do both? How can you serve yourself and how can you serve your business?
Absolutely. And this is where I think our masculine and feminine essences, right? Regardless of what gender you are, we have these energies within us. We each have both the masculine and the feminine. What's going to come to play today? And what's the integration of those two? Because you can't actually run a business or a career or life only in one. You need both. And what's the calibration for you today, right? Like, how much of each do you need? And sometimes, when we're all in our feelings, we actually, and the last thing we want to do is have the structure. What we actually need is the structure to give those feelings a channel, a place to go that's productive rather than played all over the place. And I think that knowing the difference there is what will nourish you, right? What will actually give you a sense of fulfillment in your day-to-day life, not just in the long term, but in the day-to-day life.
I have definitely, in my own business and life probably, I think of it like a pendulum with the masculine and feminine energy. And there have been periods where I'm too far in one or the other, too far in the masculine. I'm all doing strategy and, not tapping into my intuition, not taking the rest. But equally, there have been periods where I'm too in the feminine and I'm like, oh, I don't really feel like working too much today. And I'll just, go with the flow and see how it goes. And then, a month goes by and I'm like, haven't really accomplished anything.
Yeah. Or you've accomplished a lot of small things, right? You've moved the needle forward on 10 different things, but each thing that you've moved forward is only 2 centimeters forward, right? You haven't gotten the big projects done. And that is this really interesting, I'm going to call it calibration that we need. And you're right about that pendulum, that it swings and it can swing hard in one direction or the other. And I think it's really important to recognize that those swings exist and that it doesn't make you wrong. And you're not broken because of that, but a level of awareness, a perspective on it, so that you don't let it overtake you.
We've done the very introvert thing of diving right in and going straight into the deep, which is wonderful. But I am just going to backtrack because although I introduced you in the intro, I would love you to share a little bit more about your story and how you got to where you are in business, because I think it encapsulates this concept of the pendulum swing very much.
100%. Thank you. I think this is a really great connecting point because so my story is started this business in 2012, and I just hung out my shingle and I started to do my thing. And in the beginning, I definitely had this fear of, well, let me tell the whole larger trajectory, and then we can go back to who I was in the beginning as it relates to this masculine and feminine. So started this business in 2012, and first year in business, I made $30K. I was just starting out. Second year in business, I tripled my income, which I was very proud of. I got to $90K. I almost got to that mythical 6-figure mark, but not quite. And then my third year in business, I had another chunk forward of $50K and got to 138. And I was super proud of myself and completely exhausted, right? Like I was driven. I was working 12-hour days. I was not, I was just trying to get one more thing done every moment of every day. I was in total drive mode. And I realized at one point when my husband at the time called upstairs and was like, "Hey, babe, dinner's ready and come on down." And I shouted down. I was like, "I'll be right down, babe. I just want to get one more thing done." An hour later, he says, "I'm starting." Can I swear on this podcast?
Yes, please do.
I was like, "Oh, fuck." It's like, it's been an hour. I had no idea. I was completely lost in that time. And he's a great guy. He didn't shame me. He didn't judge me. He just took care of himself. But I was like, this is not the way I want to live. And how can I do things differently? How can I create success with tools different than what I was using, which was just hard work? I was like just doing the grind it out modality. I was like, I'm good at what I do, hard work, be a good person. That's what it is. And so I started to learn what successful people do. And I studied success, and I studied from people individually. I studied in books, and I studied successful people, how they lived, how they worked, all of that. And I triangulated the information, and I really dove deeply into the laws of success, these universal laws that help us live at a level that brings success. And I went from making that year $138K to $700K, 5 times my income. And then subsequent to that, crossed the 7-figure mark. So I say all this stuff about money, and I think it's telling. One, I think it's important to sort of pull back the transparency lens on money and what's possible and what it took and where I started and all of that, because I didn't just end up with a multi-7-figure business, right? There was a lot of effort, but then there's also this big exponential leap. And how did that happen? And that's a really interesting conversation to have. But it's also telling because that's the storyline that I've used for years. And it's very much, you can see in my masculine, I'm talking about the very practical, concrete financial results, right? This is what I defined as success, were these financial results. And that's not nothing. I don't feel like we can have a free life if we don't have the money that we want to live how we want to live. We'll feel constrained otherwise. So I think money is hugely important. And I do a lot of work on money mindset and how to get yourself good with money. And all those years and some after that, I was still in my masculine, driving. And I loved it until I didn't, right? It was thrilling and supportive and maybe even a little addictive, right? I got some good dopamine hits from the kind of drive that I had in creating success. But then at some point, I was like, okay, I've got this success, this financial success. And I even had some success around things like how I looked physically, like I had let go of a lot of weight and I felt really good about that. I had walked a marathon, right? Like I did a bunch of things. I did actions, things that gave me very specific results, letting go of weight, dressing differently, like curating the image of who I saw myself on the inside to be on the outside. A lot of that was really powerful work and great. And then I realized that there was this wholeness hole, right? That was like that was not, none of those things I was doing were not unimportant, but they weren't unimportant, and yet they weren't filling this wholeness hole. And I really did a deep dive into what that looks like. What does it take to like live a full life, live fulfilling, not just do things that make you feel good temporarily, but to live a what I call it exquisite life, which is this feeling of life force running through you and in you and feeling lit up all the time. And I can't say that I'm there all the time. That would be an untruth, but I'm there so much of the time. And it's been quite a shift in how I manage my energy. I know that's a big thing that you work with people on. And that's just been a huge part of what I do. How to run a successful business while having an exquisite life. I had to heal some core wounds about being unlovable and unworthy. And there's more on that on my website. We have a whole opt-in on core wounds and how to move through those and the loyalty packs we create. But like being able to have gone through that and it has freed me to create quite a different life for myself now.
And I just love the term exquisite life because it feels very nourishing, funnily enough. Another term that we touched upon. And obviously it's going to be different to different people. It's very subjective in that way. You've described your clients as ultra successful. So when they begin to work with you, they are at a level of success. They are not coming in and saying, Amira, I'm struggling. I haven't got a clue what to do. Things are terrible. They come into you already ultra successful. And yet there are areas of their life that you're still able to help them to improve. So when people come to you, what is it that often they're looking for? What's the missing piece that is going to make things exquisite for them? Because I just love saying that word.
I love it too. So thank you for that. We can have a moment together. So the women who come to me have already reached a level of financial success in however they got there. Okay. It doesn't matter. They have that level of success, and yet they are looking for more in their lives. And the one thing that I want to just speak to immediately is that it's okay to want more. We're so often told, like, shouldn't you just be satisfied with what you have, or it's bad or greedy or some negative stance around that. And I have a very different take. My take is that we're here for more life, and your desires mean that you want to grow into more. And that is your calling, your spiritual directive, the thing that is for you in this life. We need to unpack that and figure out how to help you achieve it, receive it, both. Achieve is very masculine, receive is very feminine. You need both. So women come, and they come because they want some help with something that has always been a problem for them. Okay. And I often help them with their business. I'm their trusted advisor on how to grow their business and all of that. It's not that they only come for one thing and that's the only thing we talk about, because I help many people grow, either multi-million-dollar businesses or take it beyond that. But we do it in a holistic fashion. So let me take a step back. There's usually one thing that above all else, they really want and they feel like they can't have. That something in them is broken. They just will never be able to have this thing that they really want. For me, this was the kind of relationship that I have now, right? Like fully supported, fully in growth, like deeply in love, deeply intimate. It feels exquisite to be with each other. It's sexually alive. Like it's lit up. I did not feel worthy of that relationship, right? I felt like I was just unlovable. You know, I had good relationships along the way, but ultimately I felt deeply core wound inside, like unlovable. I had to work through that. So, and when I was able to work through that and create that for myself, all these other things like a domino fell into being. So there were other things that I really wanted in life. I don't think we have a limited number of desires, but that was the one that always felt impossible to me on an identity, self-image level. For some women, they'll relate to that. For some women, it's around feeling beautiful, or it's around having real friendships, right? Belonging. There's all sorts of things that get created as core wounds. So it depends on the individual. And the first call that I have with someone when they're just interested in working with me is all about unpacking just that. Like, what is that thing? Because oftentimes we're like, oh, I don't know, or we don't want to own it, or we push it aside a little bit. We want a safe container to identify it and really take the time to see it for what it is, make it less scary and something that you're capable of moving through.
I love the point you made about you can want more. Like, these people have success and they want more. I literally did a solo episode on this probably about a month ago. Like, things can be good and you can want them to be great. That's okay. You don't have to make do with good. And things can be great and you can want them to be exceptional. And that's okay. And I think so much of the conditioning, like you say, is around, well, you should be satisfied. You have a roof over your head and you don't complain and like, don't put your head up. And actually we're here saying like, no, want all of the things and, have whatever your heart desires and work towards it. And I think with the core wound piece as well, another point to make here is a lot of people feel like they can't have it all. So a lot of people feel like, oh, well, I can have a very successful career or business, but then I won't have a good relationship as well. I can't have both. Or they'll say, oh, well, I can have a really happy family life, but then I don't feel like I can make as much money as if I was a single person. So there's often we believe there's got to be a trade-off, and somehow we can't have all of the things.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is, it's true and it's not true. Okay. So I think that we can't have all the things if we keep doing it the same way we've always done it. Okay. And if we keep coming from a place of being the same person we've always been, because identity drives our actions. Our identity drives all the decisions we make, and our decisions drive our actions. And so we really have to look at being different and doing life and business differently. And so the idea that it's an either or, either I can do this or I can do that, is a paradigm that doesn't actually add up. I mean, you can see proof of people doing multiple things, okay? It might depend on what your goal is around that. Now, if you're an Olympic athlete, right, are you able to run a multi-million-dollar business and raise 3 kids and be open to a spiritual knowing side? I would say you might be able to do the first 3, but not the last one, right? There are women out there who can, like, it's that adage, you want something done, give it to a busy person, right? Like, you could do tons, you'll burn out at some point because you're going to be using your adrenals to run your life because you only have this much testosterone, right? So women, as women, if we're trying to run a business in a drive hard kind of way, in the way our society says we need to run a business and, go all the time, you're going to use your testosterone up. You're not like, you don't have the testosterone that men have. And so you start using your adrenals, and that's where adrenal fatigue comes in and burnout. So you can do it for a period of time, and then you might crash. But the challenge here is those are two different energies, right? The drive hard in all those three first areas versus the being open to receiving in the spiritual side, and the place where the life force comes from, and the delight and that feeling of living an exquisite life comes from. That's a very different way of being and energy. And so I think that the rub is that you have to learn how to have a successful business, have a successful career, go after your goals, but from a place of being open to spirit, to source, to the universe, right? And in a way that allows you to receive, and to use that word that we started off with, allows you to feel nourished as you're doing these things rather than an either or on-off switch. Yeah.
I think it's the cyclical way that energy works as well, that, things aren't linear, growth isn't linear, and we can't, like you say, just go, because you can do that for so far, and it will take you to a point, and then you'll just crash and burn. But when people, what I have seen definitely in clients who are very ambitious, they want to do that. But energy being cyclical, we have this big expansion, and then we contract a little to, reset and nourish and then expand again. And so the cycle goes on, but that can feel like a very negative thing. This contraction can feel very negative to them because they feel like, well, I'm not doing anything and nothing's happening. I'm like, but you're receiving, or you are nourishing yourself, or you're filling, as introverts, recharging and literally filling your cup back up to go out for the next expansion and the next growth. Whereas I think what we've been modeled quite often is, like you say, just this linear grow. And that's just not sustainable.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that we can have multiple places that we want to grow. And if we're open to receiving on all fronts, we'll get the answers on how to move forward. And we probably need to have a little bit of focus in one area until we master that, and it kind of can roll on its own a little bit. And then we focus on another area a little bit more intensely. And that's how you build your life so that you can have it all. That's my impression, my experience. I think that there's this concept of you can have it all, just not all at the same time. And I think that's true, but I have a slightly different nuance to it, which is that it's not that we lose. Like if you're really in this moment in time in the market, building a relationship and learning how to have a fully expressed partnership, fully lit up, exquisite partnership, you're going to want to focus on that, not to the exclusion of everything else, but you're going to learn things, you're going to practice them, you're going to have this lived experience of doing it differently that locks it in. This lived experience is so important. It was one of the words you used at the beginning that I'm like, it can't just be book learning. You got to have the lived experience of it. And then you're going to have some level of mastery with that doesn't go away. It's like learning to ride a bike. You'll always know how to ride a bike. Will your muscles still be toned if you're not riding the bike regularly? Maybe not. But you can get right back in it, and let's keep some level of tone going. That analogy is a little funny, but you get the idea. Like, it doesn't just completely go away, and then you can shift some of your focus onto something else and build that, and then there's momentum there. And it's not like you've lost the first one, okay? Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. And I think it's really important, especially with business owners, where they want to build a business and they have ideas for 3 or 4 different revenue streams and they try to go at them all at the same time versus you get a revenue stream and get some consistent money coming in, some stability there, and then build and grow from that. I think it's very easy, especially for more like service-based providers and coaches and consultants, to be like, I want to do everything and try to do all these things at once and wonder why they're not gaining traction. Whereas if you have a full one-on-one practice, let's say, and then you go, okay, I want to launch a group or I want to launch a different offer, you're coming from a much more stable place.
100%. And so tempting. It's like, we want to do all the things.
Let's launch everything
at once. Right.
Yes.
And you'll splay yourself out for sure. So there's something to be said about like, we have a certain amount of attention and energy goes where your attention is, right? So, how many different things can you give true and honest attention to and have enough energy for that? And I'd be interested to know your thoughts on where people get energy, because I think that's an interesting one. We've been talking about it as if like, if I put my attention on this, my focus on this, that I'm going to lose some energy or somehow it diminishes it, versus it feeding us and giving us more energy, which is kind of the thing around like when you're busy, it gives you more energy to do other things. Sometimes it's false energy, but sometimes it's true energy.
I think the false energy piece for my audience as introverts, this is something we have to work on because yes, they're ambitious introverts. They're not, I'm sitting in the corner scared to talk to anyone, like a little mouse type introverts, that, very confident people. But it's that energy balance, and quite often being around other people, they think gives them a lot of energy, but they're actually overstimulated. So they can spend a lot of time with people and they can really, absorb that energy like a sponge. And someone talks about something and they go, oh, that's great. And they almost kind of like take it on as their own and they're all hyped up. But it's if we're using the video, you'll see me doing this dance, like a hyped up dance. But it's really distinguishing, is that yours or are you actually just residually picking up on someone else's excitement? And that's why for introverts, and like that energy truly comes from going inwards and it comes from a lack of stimulus. And I don't mean you've got to sit like a monk and, meditate in silence. But what I mean is be with yourself and be with your own thoughts and be with your energy. And we'll know as introverts, too much people time, we want to withdraw. That's our energy literally craving, like I need to fill up. And it's like you said, with that spiritual connection, whatever people want to call it, connection to source or God or the universe or however they use it, to access that and to tap into that. You don't do that in a group of people talking about it. You do that by spending time alone, and you do that by going inwards, which I still think is a practice many people, even people that know they're introverts, don't prioritize highly enough in their day-to-day life.
Yeah. Do you think that, we talked about the pendulum swinging, right? Do you think there's a place where the introvert spends too much time alone? Like it swings to that side of the pendulum swings to that side?
I think it can do. What I have seen anecdotally to be true with myself and with clients is that they are spending a lot of time alone, but they're not really alone because they're consuming. So they're listening to podcasts or reading books or, binging Netflix or something. So they go, oh, but I've spent all day on my own, but they haven't meditated. They haven't maybe got out into nature. They haven't sat in silence. They haven't journaled. They haven't connected with what's going on inside. So whether that's their own thoughts or whether that is that spiritual connection, like you say. So there is there's a quality of being alone that can, so yeah, you could spend a week alone, but if you're not actually stopping to listen to what's going on inside, you haven't accessed anything.
Yeah, I agree. Yep.
What does your kind of alone time look like? What's nourishing to Amira when she's alone?
I have a lot of alone time. I wake up in the morning and I meditate first thing in the morning. And that's like essential. And then I'll have a couple cups of tea and I'll just connect to spirit, and I'll sit usually with a pen and a pad and have a little conversation with God, with spirit, with source, whatever you want to call that, with my soul. I'll have questions, I'll get answers, I'll go back and forth. And it's generally a pretty deep conversation. Some people might think that that's a little woo-woo or out there, but it's over the years, it's where I've gotten the most clarity about everything that I need to do. And it's how I feel the most tapped in and alive and plugged into to life force, the universe. And it's like an instant reset, and it's true energy for me versus, like we were talking about earlier, that sort of adrenal energy. So I give myself in the morning at least 3 hours. I don't.
Delightful.
I let myself wake up whenever I want. I don't book calls. Generally before 10. Occasionally there's a 9:30, 9:45 call. But I'm pretty fast in that boundary. And like this morning, I just came back from traveling a day or so ago, and I slept in quite late. And for me, I woke up at 6:30. Usually I'm up at 4 or 5 in the morning, and I have a good chunk of time to meditate and then, have time by myself, get dressed. Getting dressed has been a thing as well. Like I used to rush through getting dressed. I wouldn't give myself time to enjoy the process of getting ready, adornment.
Like it was just a chore, something you just did.
Correct. And I would give myself maybe 10 minutes and I would rush through it and it would be like a mad dash. And now I give myself, it's a gift I give myself. And it's really a quality of stepping into my feminine, even though I'm entering the workday, which can be a more masculine kind of energy for me, that allows me to find a nice integration and harmony and balance there. So I give myself that time. And then of late, I've been also ending my work days much earlier than I used to. Different days are different, right? We have different things on our plate. It's not always, I hear a lot of people talk about and here are my lines and here are my boundaries and it's never altered and it's just like this. And I think it does humanity a disservice because inevitably different days, there are different things that come up. And sometimes I'm working later than I said I was going to, but it's a conscious choice, not an automatic habit, not a guilt-driven habit. It's the exception rather than the rule, and it's made with conscious choice. So generally, I finish up around 4, and then I have my evenings to sort of also have quiet time. And the reason I asked, do you think introverts can have too much quiet time, is that I've really been exploring this idea of like, how much time do I actually need to myself? Like, what is truly nourishing? And it's been fascinating. So I'm finding a 10 to 4, more or less 9:30, 4:30 time horizon for being in work. And again, I'm doing my work in less of that grinded out way now and more in a steady flow, taking breaks, having connections kind of way that really feeds me. And then in the evening, it's again, like I work out or I take a walk or I listen to the audio books at that point, right? And that's the quiet time that might be more engaging for me, or I'll have a good conversation with someone, and that's one-on-one. Yeah, so those are my nourishing principles, right?
And I love that you found that, what works for you, and actually alone with, your spiritual practice in the morning works really well. And then you can be alone in the evening, but you might want to be doing some active learning or, just, enjoying to listen to something or chat with someone, but it's a different quality of alone, and they're all equally valid, but knowing what works for you. I mean, how would your day feel if you just didn't do your morning practice?
It feels agitated, like I feel this like agitation inside. I will say it's not, the truth is I can go a day or two without doing it and I'm still feeling tapped in and connected and whole. But if I start going more than that, if I start making it a practice of skipping this, I will find myself a little frayed at the edges, right? I will find I might be a little snippy or a little short in my thinking. I might not be as expansive in my thinking. I might not be as accepting when, life inevitably throws you the curveballs, and I can feel the edge coming back. Yeah.
It's really interesting because I think identifying that feeling, that's a key thing that I work with clients because it can be different for everyone. So some people it's just, I feel tired, or some people it's irritability. Like I feel just a bit irritable, on edge, or, and it can be different for, obviously for different people. But quite often when I say, how's your mindset and energy practices going? I'm met with silence because then it's like, oh yeah, well, I haven't done it for a week. And they start to then see the correlation between that.
Yeah, 100%. So for me, it's huge. But it's not been a practice that I've had for all my life. I had to really learn it and stick that this is where, that masculine commitment and focus really came in because I had to learn meditation, right? I had to, and I tried for many, many years in various different ways. And I just thought, I am not good at this and I can't do it. And, I'm good at these other things. Let's go over here instead. Right. But once I found the practice that worked for me, it's just opened up such a different world, a whole new world that's pretty expansive.
And a good reminder there that we don't always get things straight away. I was the same. Meditation was dipping in and out for many, many years and feeling vastly uncomfortable and like a failure and all of these things before finding a way. And obviously my way could be completely different to yours, completely different to someone else's, but knowing that it's trial and error. And because something doesn't stick straight away, it doesn't mean anything. Don't attach a story to it. Just get curious about what could work instead.
Yeah, absolutely. To me, it's one of the key components of having an exquisite life, because I think your podcast is the Ambitious Introvert. We're ambitious. We have goals. We have drives. We have desires. And they are for what? Like we have, we started this conversation off like more life and like, what's the next thing that we desire? And maybe it's a financial goal in your business or your career, or maybe it's, you want a second house, or you want to buy a house, or you want to get in good shape. Whatever it is, you have some goal that you're going for. And we think that these things that we are going to achieve, that we have this ambition, this drive to achieve, will get us something. That's why we want them. We think that they are going to give us something. They're going to solve a problem that will allow us to get what we want. And if we dive deeper and dig in and ask ourselves, well, what is it that we want? Like, why is that important? And we'll get the next layer down and then ask again, well, what's important about that? And what's important about that? And what's important about that? And ultimately, you'll get to some version of joy, freedom, peace, right? Like, I just want to be happy. Like, I just want to be free. I just want to be in love with life, right? And ultimately, our connection to source is what allows us to be in love with life. So then the question is, how do we live our life from that place? How do we run our business, grow our career from a place that's tapped in versus saying, I'm going to jump through all these hoops in order to get this thing. Let's shortcut that. Let's go get that tapped in, like in love with life, totally free, exquisitely happy feeling, and live our life from that place instead. And go after all the things we want with desire, but not with attachment. Bada bing, bada bang. Then you've changed the paradigm on yourself, and you've given yourself a really different way of creating, a different place you're creating from. different drivers.
When you were saying all that, I want to just, before we wrap up, circle back around to your journey, because I think there's a part of that that ties in so beautifully. You grew a hugely successful business, and actually you changed that business significantly from a one-to-many model to only working one-on-one with clients. I've been working only one-on-one with clients for about the last 9 months now. And that's not to say I'll never run programs or groups again, but it's a decision I made. And it goes against what most people are taught about growing a business or scaling a business.
Yeah.
So for you, what made you decide to go back to one-on-one only? And how has that changed your relationship with your business?
Oh, such a good question. Thank you for asking that. So, I had I started my business one-on-one back way back in the day. And then I built a small group program. And then from that group program, I built a bigger group program that then grew into quite a significant mastermind group. And I always had private clients at the same time, but that was sort of the centerpiece, the flagship offering in my business. And I was part of a group that I really found quite nourishing in many ways, but it was had that masculine drive energy that I love, because I love men, right? I love the masculine. I have a lot of masculine in me. So I was very attracted to it. I was like, oh yeah, go. Let's go. Bigger, right? And I started to look at scaling that flagship program. And I was like, okay, let's go from 30 to 40 to 50 to 60 to 70 to 80. And like, okay, I can see this. This is what we're doing is great. Let's build it, right? And grow it beyond the 30 to 40 person range that it was in. And I started doing that, and I hated it. It wasn't that I hated the program. I hated the lack of intimacy. I didn't like not being able to connect with people, even though I was doing office hours and regularly showing up for my clientele. They weren't showing up, because when something was big, and trust me, we tried all the things to create the container so that people would show up. When programs get bigger, people tend to go invisible. They tend to step out. And I'm not saying that all programs are like that. And I realize that there are people who have been able to figure this out. But because of the way I'm wired, that wasn't working for me. And so I did some deep soul searching, and I realized that what I'd rather do is work with a fewer number of people, but more intimately and more deeply. So I'm right now doing just one-on-one work, but then we are launching next year the Exquisite Life Mastermind. It's called the Exquisite, which is for women who are running businesses, who have careers that are very successful right now, but they're struggling with, okay, how do I balance this energy that I have in my business with all the other things that I want to do in my life? I've reached this level of success. Now what? Like, do I keep adding another goalpost to go after? Like, am I going for 8 figures, 9 figures, 10 figures? Like, what is that still lighting me up? It might be, but what is missing, right? What do you want in addition? Let's figure that out, and let's figure out how to create an exquisite life for you. That doesn't mean that you have to give up your ambition, your drive, right? So that's the work that I do. And it's been a wild ride to make that shift and to steer the business in a different direction. But it's been, I check in and I tap in and I'm like, am I still going in the right direction? And the answer is yes. So it is the right decision for me. It may not be the right decision for everyone. I feel like for your audience, there's just so many different ways to do a career, run a business. And it's really important to tap into what's right for you. And it could be a hybrid model, right? Or like how I started in the beginning was very small group, not large group. And that feels connected to me. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think a lot of the entrepreneurs listening, particularly that work, as coaches, consultants, therapists, will understand that, because we like that depth. We like that connection piece. And sometimes it can feel very diluted when things get too big.
Yeah. And here's the thing, my business background, right? Because for many years, the focus of what I was doing was helping women scale their businesses, right? Like actually, like let's everything's important, but let's put money front and center, because if you're not making money in your life, then you're going to be strapped and constrained in all these other ways. And I taught and still teach very clearly that there's only 3 ways to make more money. You have to raise your prices, you have to sell more quantity wise, or you add a new channel of income. So if you want to work with fewer people, you have to understand what other levers you have to pull if you're going to continue to make the money that you were making or that you want to be making. So I think it's important not to just have kind of magical thinking about, okay, well, I'm going to work with fewer people and that's all going to be perfect. You have to understand what things need to change in order for you on the business front to make more money. Now, as a career, I've helped a lot of women grow their income in business, going from low 6 figures to high 6 figures, radically. And that also is totally possible. You just have to have a different perspective so that you can see the opportunities that are right in front of you. Like when I've helped people get positions that have, 10-folded their income, it hasn't been because that opportunity wasn't there. It's just that they weren't the person who could see it yet. And when they did that, everything shifted. So there's that too.
Amira, I have loved this conversation. I could talk to you all day, but sadly, our podcast episodes don't run all day. It's been very, I'm sure, expansive for many people and very permission giving, because it's always good to hear other ambitious introverts and the way they are managing their energy and living their lives exquisitely. But before I let you go, I'm going to ask you, what is, would you say, the one fundamental practice that you could not own your energy and, perform at your best without?
Well, I think we've already talked about it a little bit. It's that meditation, but maybe I can put it into a trifecta of things that I pull together. It's that meditation in the morning, that quiet time, talking to my own source and spirit, that time to myself. And then the third piece, which is the one that I struggle with the most, to be honest, is something physical for my body, working out, doing something that gets me back in my body. Because I think a lot of introverts maybe have the same thing. They're all in their head. I'm having the whole conversation. I can hold both sides right up here, right? And it's really important for me to get back in my body. And I tend to blow that off the most. But if I were to say, if I could put those 3 things together and make those the non-negotiables in my life, stunning. I am nourished. I have energy. I'm ready to go in life. So
beautiful. Full circle background to nourishment and energy. Thank you so much for being so open and sharing all of your wisdom with us. I will pop all of your links in the show notes, so anyone that wants to come and find you and connect with you in all the places can do that. And thank you once again.
You're so welcome. This was a great conversation. Thanks for having me.
Nourishment was the key word in this episode, and I truly hope that you have listened and that you do indeed feel nourished by mine and Amira's conversation. I just wanted to point out something about, I think, 3/4 of the way through. I asked Amira something and she said, "That is a great question." Now, this is very common for me on the podcast, where guests tell me that I asked them a really great question that really made them think or dive into something. And of course, this isn't too much of a surprise because I am a coach. And ultimately, that's what I'm doing for my clients. I am asking them questions so that they can go within and really create and pull out that success that's inside of them on their own terms. And also to have elevated conversations with them to literally lift their mood, lift their energy, lift their consciousness. And the reason I'm saying this is because I currently have a space for private coaching. And if being asked maybe some challenging and deep, but, very intentional questions is something that you think could help you on your path to even more success while you balance your energy and keep your social battery topped up along the way, then I would invite you to fill out the form. The link is in the show notes. I would love to have a conversation to see if this would be a good fit for you. But if you have had any kind of resonance to this episode in particular, then I know that you are someone that would fall into the category of a client that would get amazing results if we work together. So if there's questions, if it feels a little bit scary and a little bit stretchy, then maybe that's also a sign that it could be the thing that you need for your growth edge. But that space is probably going to be available later on this month, early September. So if that feels good and it feels like something that you would like to explore, then please fill out the form without obligation. I would love to have a conversation with you. Thank you for tuning into this week's episode. I hope that you're feeling expanded to what's possible for you, motivated to take action, and inspired about how you can start to own your energy. I share even more tools and resources on my Introverts Only email newsletter. By signing up, you not only get early access to the Ambitious Introvert products and services, but you also get brand new podcast episodes delivered straight to your inbox every Monday, meaning you'll never miss your weekly dose of introvert-friendly inspiration. Sign up now at theambitiousintrovert.com/newsletter or click the link in the show notes. See you next week.